Hey everyone, we're back and we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. This is going to be a relatively quick stream. We're going to be doing two basic things. One is we're going to be creating a map specific for our overworld so we can stream back into it when we're leaving cities. And then we're also going to be making all of our cities and NPCs datafied, which means that we're going to create a data class that's just going to be a class that just has all their data in it. It's not going to be doing too much with it. It's literally just going to be handling the data, which is things like the name of the city, who owns it, just stuff like that. But we'll go ahead and get started, and we're going to start by going to our maps directory here. Oh, nope. We're going to our custom directory. This is where we're putting all of our custom stuff. And we are going to go to maps in here, and we're going to add a new level, and let's call this map overworld. We are going to then go to levels, add existing, map overworld to it. Actually, you know what? I did this last time. We're going to undo that. We're going to undo that. That's fine. We actually want to duplicate this. It's not going to let me name it this. It will. Okay, that's fine. So it did actually get deleted. It just didn't visually update from my HUD. I was actually thinking it might do that, but I'm actually really surprised that it did that. All right, we will move overworld. Can I move overworld up? No. All right. Well, that's fine. So these are copies of each other, but we'll go to our hide off everything in overworld. Gonna go ahead and close that off. It keeps recreating it every time. That's interesting. Okay. We are going to go ahead and in our overworld. Second. Also, just gonna go ahead and save these real quick. That's fine. Let me just switch between these. Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, so we have our overworld, but we need to make sure that we have a floor on it because we just removed the floor from the base world, the persistent level. So we're going to go ahead and we will just add a large cube to it. So we can just 1 meter cube. While having this selected, so this is very important, the way level streaming works when you have multiple levels up in here, is the one that you currently have selected, the one marked in blue, is the one that you're going to be adding things to. So we'll add this cube into here. Actually, that's not the quite cube I want. That's like a smooth cube. Here we go. We're going to put this at 0, 0, 0. And then we're just going to scale this by like 100, 100. Or is that too big? That's way too big, apparently. Also, oh, that's because I'm doing that. I thought I unhooked that. I guess I was wrong. There we go. Just like that. And we will move it down 50 units because that will zero it out because it's 100 units tall. I believe so anyways. Or not. Because we just all flew right through the floor. So let's take a look. Oh, no, we don't load into the world. Obviously, that's my mistake. So we need to make sure that we load in the overworld at the beginning, or else there'll be nothing there, as we saw. So we can go to our overworld game mode, which is apparently up over here for some reason. And what the first thing we got to do is load in the overworld before all of this. So we will open, nope, stream level, load stream level. It is going to be map overworld. And then once it's completed, we spawn in our factions. Or not. So usually that leads to believe that I typed this in wrong, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Map overworld. Let's make it block unload, just make sure. Nope. Oh, let's make it visible after load. That would actually help. There we go. Also, you can see the lighting is failing to be built on it. This cube, let's make sure that it has collision. Block all. Character can step on. Yes, yes, yes. And we're still clipping through the floor. Odd circumstance. The level is being streamed in. Let's just make sure that I don't have this too high. Nope. They were just clipping right on through it. Everything looks good here. But for some reason, when we spawn in, we clip through it. Let's take a look at this. Hey, our collision's built though. Our nav mesh is built, that's always good. Wait a second. Why is it like... Oh. 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 I think I might know why. Yeah. It's got no height. It's infinitesimally thin. So no collisions happening. Because it's too thin. That is my bad, gentlemen. There we go. Also, it's not that the lighting wasn't being built. It literally was just... yeah. Yeah, just was infinitesimally thin. So now with a proper scaling, we can now spawn in our overworld automatically. So once again, if we don't have that happen, before what was happening is we were just falling in. So we're streaming in the overworld immediately. We're then spawning in all of these. However, oh wait, I forgot. I was like wondering why these were showing up, but I forgot I cloned the map. I deleted the wrong ones apparently. There we go. All good there. And we will go ahead and make it so we spawn cities again. Oh, wrong one. This is apparently over here. Hook this up so we are now spawning cities. And bam. Oh, well, did not want to do that. And right now we're not unloading the overworld, but that's also because we're using it as like our main collision mesh. So when we load into the city, we're doing our third person and all of that. Also, I'm going to fix this health bar right here, and I believe I know how to do it. As you can, well, let's go ahead and kind of elaborate. As you can see, the health bar doesn't stay exactly on top of us, kind of moves around. But what we can do is go to our top-down character, which is right over here, and we can take this text render, apply it to the mesh. But further than that, we can apply it a parent socket, and we are going to choose like the head, if I can find it. There it is. That's it's a bit weird. Yeah, it's a bit weird. Uh, we're just gonna zero out everything here. We're gonna rotate this 90 degrees because for some reason it's off by 90 degrees. Bring this up. There. Oh, well. So now, instead of being at the center of our actor, it's now attached to our head, which is getting better results, but still like right there. Some odd stuff. Oh, you know what? Now that I think about it, this could have been the issue the entire time. Yeah, that was the issue the entire time. I didn't need to do a lot of that. And also, let's just make sure. So this text render, we don't want it to have shadows. Good. Wait. Okay. And we don't want it to have any collision. Just wanted to make sure. Actually, there's no option for collision on text renders. Don't know why I thought there was. But anyways, that handles our main loading into the overworld and now having our navigational mesh. And the reason why we need to do this is because when I actually opened up the project today, our navigational mesh was broken. Somehow, while adding to the level, it introduced a bug that didn't activate until we reloaded the level streaming. And that was causing the issue. We're going to go ahead and also disable a print that I had set up in our controller class here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and start datafying our objects. And the two main objects we have right now is our NPCs and our cities. And once again, to reiterate why we're doing this is that we spawn these cities in right here. They're randomly created, but when we go into a city, we despawn them. Like the cities are gone. We no longer have the cities anymore. If we were to go back out, we would no longer have any of the information about the cities because we destroyed them, because all the data was tied down to their visuals, the actual class that had the static mesh. That's going to cause problems in many different things because a lot of times we're going to need to process and gather data about cities that the player isn't even aware of in the back end for AI to process their moves. So what we need to do is we need to make it so we can access those in memory at all times, but not necessarily need to display them. And so we're just going to create a few classes that are going to encapsulate that data. We're going to go ahead into our top-down BP, go to our custom, and we are going to go to city, and we're going to go ahead and add a new class here. We are going to make this a object, not an actor, not a pawn, not a character, not a player controller, not a game mode, but an object. There we go. And what that means is that it has no transform. It's not tied to a single 3D location, rotation, or scale. It's independent. It just solely exists in memory, which is exactly what we want from a data class. So I'm going to go ahead and name this just city. And this is going to contain everything that we need to know about a city. Uh, oh, we're somehow still playing the game. That's fine. We stopped it there. We're going to go ahead and create one, and we're just going to go ahead and just start doing names real quick. We'll worry about the data types later. So we're going to say display name, which is going to be the name that we display to the city. Actually, no. The very first thing is what we're going to do is going to be the ID of the city. Then we will have display name. We will have faction owner. We will have one called tier, which is just like the tier of the city. And then also we need to know who's garrisoned inside of it, which we did a variable for that earlier. Garrisoned army. I have no idea if that's how you spell garrison. Garrisoned army. I've never really seen it in the past tense, but we're going to go with that. Garrisoned army. All right, let's go ahead and do these IDs. So the first thing about it is that this ID is that, are we going to have more than 255 cities? No, probably not. So we're going to use a byte for our ID. Display name. We will use name because of localization, but you know what? Let's just not kid ourselves. We're not going to localize this. This is a tutorial series, so we're just going to do string. Faction owner is actually going to be the enum type of our faction. Stock factions. And actually, I want to go to our stock factions real quick because there's one thing that we need to change about that. Is the very first thing that we need in this here is a faction that is called unclaimed. But when we do that, that changes also something with our faction manager, where we are reading through this and we are getting every single row and then we're spawning it for it. We don't want to spawn a character for unclaimed. So what we're going to do is make sure that we don't do that one. So we'll say equals or does not equal unclaimed. Then we create it. We're just gonna, for the time being, kind of have us out of position right there. Just confirm that works. Yep, we can see one guy right there. And that's going to be important because when we go to this new city class that we're creating, we want to make sure the default is unclaimed. And then we're also going to make the default value for this, for the display name, unclaimed. And ID will start at a default value of 0, but we're going to be using 0 as an invalid. And that's just to make sure that everything has been initialized. We know that if our ID does not equal 0, then it's been initialized. Tier, this will be a byte as well, because we're not going to have more than 256 tiers. It'll start at tier 0. And garrisoned army is going to be a reference to our top-down character. Although this will probably be changing at some point in time. Okay, so that has some things that we want. Now there's some other things that we need. NPCs that are going to be inside the village or the town. If we visit, what NPCs are going to be inside of it. And we're going to do the exact same thing we did with garrisoned army for right now, but we're going to make an array. And once again, these blue variables, these are references, which means that they're not storing, they're not instances of them. They're references to an instance of them. So if I move a garrisoned army in, or if I move an army into a city and I marked it as garrisoned, I'm not cloning the data. The data is not twice there. What's happening is that the variable in here is literally saying, okay, we're storing a way to access that data. That's much more efficient than storing all of that data, which is very good because our armies are going to have a lot of data inside of them. We don't want to duplicate everything. We don't want to buffer the entire army in memory. Instead, we just use a reference. All right, so that kind of takes care of that there. Now we're going to be doing another change, and that's going to be of our faction manager. To preface this is we're actually going to close out our tab of faction manager, and we're going to search for our faction manager, and we're going to rename this NPC manager. No, we're going to call this character manager. That makes better sense. Uh, and I don't know why I reopened it. That's not what I want to do. We're going to say character manager. And the reason why is because it's not, while it deals with factions, it's not inherently tied to it. It's more with dealing with all the characters on the board. And then what we're going to be doing now is we will now be creating a data class for NPCs. And this is actually going to be NPCs. The reason why is because with the way that the game is designed is that we're never actually unloading our character. When we go between worlds, everything else changes except for our character. We still keep it loaded. It's exactly the same thing as it was before. We're just going to change some states about it. So we can always have that in memory. So this can be purely for NPCs. So for this, we're going to go down to our custom, and we will go to our faction. We're also going to rename this to character. And we're going to create a new blueprint. We're going to make this an object, and we are going to call this NPC. And well, just like we did before, we're going to go ahead and do some variables here. First one's going to be called ID. And it's going to be a byte. Second one's going to be display name. It'll be text. You might be thinking this sounds a lot familiar. You'd be correct. And in fact, if we wanted to become really efficient, because a lot of the cities and the NPCs are going to share properties, we could actually have something that a class that inherits, something that just has like ID, display name, and stuff like that, and then just have all the individual variables part of subclasses, and that's part of the inheritance portion of object-oriented programming. And we might actually do that in the future, but for right now, I can't think of too much benefit from it. But if we do want to datafy a lot of different things, they're most likely going to need an ID and a display name, so it makes sense to do something like that. It gives us the ability to also utilize the parent class to basically filter out, or no, that's not correct. Delegate would be the correct way to delegate procedures dynamically. Meaning at runtime, we could figure out how to do it by only just passing the assumption that we know it's parent class. That's all we got to know. So anything that is inherited from it, we can assure our compiler that, hey, we got a way to check for it, and we can guarantee that it won't crash at runtime. I mean, it's not always, an honest promise. We do our best, but something slips through the cracks, and next thing you know, runtime error, null pointer, stuff like that. But anyways, let's get back to the programming. What we're going to be doing here is we now need to know what squad mates or what army this guy has. Oh, why am I wrong one? We're going to make this army, and this is going to be top-down character, and it is going to be an array of its army. So this unit, every NPC is going to be something that's like in the overworld or that's something in a town, but they can also have an army associated with them of other top-down characters. And this is how we keep that references that list of references in a nice organized way. We're using T arrays, which are very similar to arrays, except that they have a lot of automatic resizing. UE4 does this, but there's a lot of different things. If you're familiar with C#, there's built-in functionality with lists and stuff like that. But that's all we're doing is we're just making sure that we're going to be keeping track of the army and all of that. But for right now, that's all we need. No, we also need a faction as well. That is not going to be an array, though. They are only going to have one faction. Okay, we're good there. So now what we need to do is we need to change how we're spawning our cities, because now we want to be spawning these UE objects and then building them off of the data. So we'll go ahead and start with our city manager here. Um, we're good here. Okay, so we're going to say construct object from class, which is very similar to our spawn actor from class, which is what this node is here, except that we can only spawn objects. Wait, I would think we could only spawn objects, but we can also spawn blueprints. How does the transform get handled? I'm going to assume that this wouldn't actually work. That the fact that it shows up here might be counterintuitive to what it actually does. But anyways, we're just going to go ahead and construct an object. And that is one thing you will see here, is that if we go here, we do not see city here. We see BP city, but we don't see city because it's not an actor. It doesn't inherit from an actor. And this is what I was talking about before, and this is called polymorphism with regards to object-oriented programming, is that this node here works for anything that derives from an actor because it's built to work around the parent class actor. Anything that inherits from an actor can work from here. Objects don't inherit from actor. Actors inherit from objects, but it doesn't go the other way around. So we don't see objects in here, but for some reason we can see objects and blueprints, although once again, I don't think this would do anything good. I would not recommend it. But anyways, we go ahead and do this. We construct it. Oh, there's things that we need, and I forgot about these. We need to store their location. Actually, not their location. We need to store their transform. And not an array. And we need that for both of these. And in fact, we're going to go ahead, instance editable, expose on spawn for both of these. Probably going to need some more as well, but for right now, we'll keep it pretty limited. All right, going back to our city manager class, we are going to refresh this node so our new transform is in there. We are going to go ahead and we need to pop this transform in here, and then we need to pull it out from here. The reason why is that if we pull it from here, this value is going to be different than the value we fed in here, because every time an execution wire skips to a node, it will re-pull anything that has been processed before the previous execution node and get its value again. And because it's randomizing it, it will actually pull two different values for this here and this here because of this node here. Now, so how we get past that is we just pull the transform out of here. Boom, like that. Because this value is this value here. Because we're setting it, it is now a buffer to it, and we don't have to reprocess the random logic. We need a reference to self, because this is what's spawning it. This is what's keeping track of it to make sure that it is properly cleaned up by garbage collection. And oh man, you could have a discussion of its own on garbage collection. But basically, memory leaks are very bad things in game development, and they happen quite often. And so what usually most engines, languages, and stuff will do is they have something called a garbage collector, which is a way to automatically clean up stuff that it deems is not relevant anymore. And with UE4, how it deems something that's relevant is if it has a reference to another object that is tied to the main game instance. And so when we spawn this object, if we did not have this here, two things are going to happen. First of all, it won't let us compile. Second of all, is the reason why it won't let us compile, or why it shouldn't let us compile, is if we did do that, after 60 seconds, this would automatically be deleted. It would get cleaned up by garbage collection. But by storing a reference to our city manager, which is spawned in our game instance, which means it's persistent, it will now persist longer than 60 seconds. Garbage collection knows that this is something that we want to keep in memory. And so that's why we need that reference here. But I think that's all we kind of need for this. If you'll, wait, no, we got to do something here. We have to also give it an ID. That's what we're going to need to do for both of these. Actually, you know what? Aren't maybe all of these should just be exposed on spawn. Can I? You can't multiple select. Well, not tier. Tier doesn't need to be that way. I think we're good. And the way that we're going to do this is going to be a little bit different. Oh, also, here's something else we're going to do. Is we're going to make it so we store a reference to the blueprint version of it as well. This, however, is not going to be exposed on spawn. The reason why is because it's not going to exist, because we spawn the city afterwards. Which is fine, means I also want to kind of have a function for this, which is we're going to go ahead and create a function. We're going to say visualize city, which means is we're going to take the data and then we're going to build the visuals for the city. And for that, we're going to go to our city manager and to our initialization logic. We're going to take this here. That's right, we're using this for our collision. But that's fine. Which means that we're going to have to implement some complex world logic pretty soon. But we would have to do that anyways. I was just hoping to hold it back for a little bit, but now that I realize we were depending a lot upon the visuals of the mesh to determine if it was a safe place to spawn. But that's fine. We will deal with the clipping for now. And we will go ahead and just grab this here. We will go to our visualize city function that we just created. Excuse me. And then we are going to pass it the city object. City to visualize. And these are kind of verbose like parameter names. You don't have to be this. You just do city. We're going to say get transform. Pop that in there. And once again, this is our custom transform variable, which is going to be confusing because there's a lot of ways to get transformed, and also it's a data type of transform that's called transform, which is always confusing. But hey, you'll get used to it. I think we just leave that for right now. I think that's it. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Go back to our city manager. Go back to our initialization. Boo, 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 Wait, no. We do want to go to our back to this visualize city. We actually want to add an output, which means that we're always going to be returning something here, and we're going to be returning the visual class that we created. The reason why is because we then need to set that. Actually, you know what? No, I do want to restructure this a little bit. Now that I think about this seems a little bit redundant, and we're only putting like a slight veneer over what we're actually doing. And I'm going to do this differently. We're actually going to delete this function. And we're going to put this logic within our BP city class. This is how we're going to visualize. We're going to do a just a visualize function here. And we will say the city data here. And there really is nothing to visualize here, but the reason why I want it in here is because, oh, let's actually, city data. The reason why that I want it in here is because if we do it this way, we can bypass from having to store a reference in every one of our cities to the city manager. Because all this should be is to be able to just take the data and visualize it once. It's not going to change unless the data changes. At that point in time, we can revisualize the city. So we're going to just leave this function here. We're going to go to our city manager. We are going to put back in the spawn here. We will put this here. We will then do call our visualize here. We then pump in the data there for it to visualize, which right now this is doing nothing. And then, instead of this city as being a type of BP city, we want it to be an array of, or data type city. Plug that in there. We then also take the city data, plug that into here. And actually, I'm going to make it so this is a little bit more understandable of what's going on. Plug that in, plug this in. Just like that. Still using our max city logic, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the length and we're going to popping this into the ID. And this will automatically ID our cities for us. Because, and this works because cities aren't going to be destroyed. When we do this for our characters, this is not going to be the case because characters could die. And that means we're not going to have the same amount of length every single time. But for right now, this works. We got this here. Clear cities. That's right. We'll go here. And actually, this is important. And this is very, very important. But before we get to this, let's go here. We're missing one step here. And we need to pull up from our, or not from here, but from our city. We need to say set BP. And then we're setting the reference of the blueprint class of our city there so we can then access it. The reason why is because we need to do that when we clear our cities. Because we will then say get the BP. And then destroy actor. Also, because we're doing this, this is no longer tied to the thing that we're destroying. We can now just do a normal for loop for each loop instead of a reverse loop. Get BP. First, I'm going to do just a little check here is valid. This will just allow us to blanket call this. Later on, we'll just be using better structure and state machines to hey, got unplugged there. But we'll be using state machines later to make sure that we don't need checks like this. But for right now, this means that we can call this whenever we want, and it's only going to be deleting stuff that actually exists, but we still maintain the data, so we can still parse through all the cities in memory and be able to perform logic on them. Okay. But that's why we need that reference there, so we can be able to do things to it. Yeah. Might also need the city ID, though, at the very least. Because I'm trying to think. We're a city. We step into the city. We'll use an interface. We'll just use an interface. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this, but at the end of the day, because we're going to be supporting a large number of cities that can be controlled dynamically, we'll need an interface most likely for that. So we'll get there at a later time. But for right now, we're good here. We were going to go ahead into our faction, or now our character handler. If I can find it real quick. May have closed it. Character manager. There it is. And I did close it. So we're going to be doing something very similar. One thing that's going to be different is we actually need to track the IDs for this. Because like I said before, is that unlike cities, characters can come and go. So we need to make sure that we always know um, next available ID. I like doing my IDs like this. We're going to make it a yeah, we won't make it so you can have over 256 characters. Okay, next available ID, blah, 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 blah. We'll start out at 1. We are going to refresh this here. Actually, no. We need to kind of stretch this out a little bit. We are going to construct object from class. We are going to select our NPC. We then plug in the transform here. Interesting. We need a reference to self here. We then get our cached location or cache transform from here to then use for spawning this here. We then set, did I create a reference for BP? May not need it. I mean, I guess we will because we have the clear NPCs. That's fine. Spawn that. Top down character. Going back to our character manager, so we can then set BP, setting it with a reference to the blueprint version of it that we spawn. This should be part of visualize. And then this needs to be changed down to our type of NPC. Oh, I almost closed out of there. That would have been very unfortunate. Take our object here. Oop, that's not the object. That is the blueprint. Here is the object. Plug that in there. Go to our clear NPCs. Break that there. Break that there. Do that there. Get BP. Okay, nothing broke. We recoded it all, and everything still looks the same. Yep. Although clear cities is not being called correctly. Let's figure out why. Uh, Top-down character, that would be in BP City. Event, blah, blah, blah. Oh, whoops a daisy. Also, let's do this as well for our character manager. But yeah, things work a lot better when you actually hook them up, I find. But honestly, I'm actually surprised that's the only bug we had. A lot of the time we're just hastily throwing on code. Oh, come on. Nope. Ah, there is issues with the finding logic, and that's because it is not built with that system. Here we go. There it is. Don't know why that allowed us to even compile. For each city. Actually, yeah, we want to do this. Get. No, wait. Yeah. And then we just get our BP, which is still handling this logic, although it should definitely be passed through our data. Shouldn't be stored there anymore. But for right now, getting this working. I'll kill this one right here. Explosion's so loud. It's still not working. For each city is garrisoning. This is false. We're not setting it then. No, wait. No, they were getting cleared up. Wait, we weren't knowing if they were getting cleared up because we never even got to test it. Let's just double check. Initialize BP. Yes, target the city. Yeah, this all looks good. Hmm. Oh, not a controller, top-down character. There we go. Well, let's take a look at this. I'm going to drag this off over here. Let's see what's going on with our characters here. Hmm. Oh, there we go. Now they know how to actually get there. We were telling them to go to themselves, which they would always be at themselves. All right, there we go. Go in here. The cities get destroyed. We now stream into our little city thing. And so if we ever wanted to recreate our cities now, all we have to do is call something that reads this, which honestly, this should be its own function. We'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll wrap up. Um, yeah, we're going to create a function that says visualize overworld. Oh, wait, visualize overworld cities. And then what we will do is we'll go through each city, and then we will go through the logic to initialize them. Which would be this here. I'm actually also going to kind of do that there because I'm going to copy this, visualize overworld, paste this in here, plop this into there, put this pin into here, and baby, we got a stew going. Just getting a little bit particular with my formatting here. Anyways, okay. Go through all of our cities. Do. We don't want this though. We do want it to set that there. So that's the one thing that changes. And then our cities are visualized. Okay. So let's go to our initialization logic. We add our cities there. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And then when we're done, we then visualize overworld cities, which is now a function that we can call whenever we leave a city to generate it again, which is now independent from our logic that actually spawns our cities. So I'm actually just, right now, I'm just going to comment some stuff right here just to clarify what a lot of this does. So this block of code, what it does right here is that it randomizes the initial cities. We then visualize the overworld. So that's what's going on here. Nothing too complex, and if we click play, everything should still be normal. Everything looks normal. Just make sure they all clean for this city. We go into it, bam, those cities get cleaned up. Okay. So in our NPC manager, or our character manager, we'll probably also do something that's like a visualize overworld character or overworld NPCs, things like that. But let's see. Just double checking everything. This all looks good. We then visualize the city with the data. So some things to look forward to that we're going to have to be doing soon is that, I guess I can kind of show it now, is that for this to honestly work, to always have visualized mapping of this of all the data cities to be visualized, we have to do always spawn ignore collision here. But that's going to cause a problem, and we'll see it if we do it a few times. Well, it only took us like real one time to see. Oh, well, I entered the city. Let's try it again. So you see, now these cities are going to start clipping. And so we're going to have to do some logic, which is something we would have to do anyways, because depending on the collision is not really sufficient. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do our own logic check whenever we spawn cities, so cities aren't spawned too close to each other, and also to make sure that it's kind of a random distribution, so there's not too much of a weight of value to one specific area. But we did what we sought out to do today, which is to datafy our classes, and we went ahead and now have up our initial world mesh. So this was going to be a short stream for today, but next week we're going to get down to armies, having it so we can go into towns, leave towns, recruit people into our armies, and then probably not that session, but the session after that, we'll actually get into armies fighting each other, where just like where we go into cities where we stream into a level, we'll stream into a battlefield level, and both sides will fight each other. But that's it for today, guys. I'm going to go ahead and awkwardly try to delay for a few seconds because I always forget to bring up my OBS before I do my call off. So it's actually timely, but here it is. So I'll catch you all later, and thanks for watching.